Hello, 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 and we are live. Happy Friday, everybody. It is November 14th. Thank you so much for tuning in to My Community Manager, the community built by, for, and managed by community managers. I am super excited. We are brewless today. That's not why I'm excited, but we are brewless today, but no need to fear. Dom and Sherry are here holding down the fort. I rehearsed that way too many times earlier today. Yeah, we're here really excited to be able to jump into this panel with you guys. Hello to everybody that's hanging out over on Twitter. I know that we are Sarah-less and Carrie-less as well, so Sherry is co-hosting with me on here and holding down the fort over on Twitter. Before we jump in and introduce ourselves, just wanted to make sure, this panel really came out of a question submitted through mycommunitymanager.com. So if you go to mycmgr.com, there's a little link that says participate. Make sure you click on that. This entire show is all you guys, everything that we've got going on. So the questions, the panelists, it's all you. So make sure you submit your questions and what you want to talk about, and we will get that in a future week. But enough of all that. We have a great panel on community moderation. We had a fantastic question submitted by one of our panelists here, Jordan, and I'm really excited to dive in. So let's have the panel introduce themselves, starting with Terry.
All right, so let me unmute myself. Okay, I'm Terry, and I am the Social Media and Community Coordinator at ICUC, and we provide social media services, among them moderation for large brands. And before I got into this position, I worked under them doing moderation on social media and later on news sites.
All right, Rachel.
Hey everyone, I'm Rachel Miller, Chief Listener at Pipeliner CRM, and also co-host of Social Selling Hour on Monday with the amazing Brian Fanzo. I'm super excited to discuss this topic with everyone.
Great, I'll go. Hi everybody, I'm Jordan, Community Manager at understood.org, a new website just launched. It is a resource for parents who have children with learning and attention issues. Excited to be here.
Man, where were you like 10 years ago? My son's 18 now.
Well, we've got stuff. Come on over.
I'll come peek in. I'm David Dewald. I'm Community Manager at thunderhead.com, where we do customer lifecycle management.
Cool. Hey everyone, I'm Sherry. I co-produce the MGR Hangout with Brew and lately Dom as well. I'm really excited to be here with you all. I also lead our community and user experience teams at Rebellion Media. That's pretty much it.
Awesome. And like I said, I'm Dom. I am the co-founder of Gathering at the Gathering app, as well as the social media specialist for CET International. Really excited to be jumping in. So, we've talking about community moderation. It's something that all the way back January of last year, we hosted the Community Manager Appreciation Day on forums. We had a panel on forums and moderation with Patrick O'Keefe and the e-moderation team. But we've been getting a lot more of these questions, especially from one of our panelists here, Jordan, like I said. So we wanted to do this. So let me just jump in. Jordan, if you want to take the first one, since you're sort of the catalyst here, who moderates? The first question is really, who moderates your community?
That's a great question. I'm not saying that just because I may have been the one that asked it. I really think it is a great question, and I think there's layers of answers to this question. So, first of all, the person that moderates the community, I think, is the community manager. So maybe the one who sets the tone, who writes the guidelines, is that community manager. most likely in collaboration with a larger team. Brand, it has to do with messaging overall. So you kind of want things to be consistent in your community. And when you moderate, you want to carry that voice through all the comments and conversations that are happening. But there's no way that a community manager can do moderation services by himself or herself. So what we've done at Understood is build a group of volunteer moderators. And I know that's really, a lot of people do that. It's the first time I've been this involved with such a large group of moderators, volunteers, and I'm really glad we're doing it this way, and there's a couple of reasons. One is that I just don't think that Understood would have been able to attract the kind of talent that's in the volunteer pool and been able to afford to have them on staff. So they have an expertise and a perspective that they bring to the moderation that doesn't exist on our team, our staff. So, and the second reason is that they're doing this because they want to. They're really passionate about the subject matter, and I'm getting paid to do it, and I love it. But they're doing it for a much deeper reason as well. So it's a team effort. And one more thing, the last layer, which is a little less apparent and a little less consistent, is the staff overall. So everybody on our team in our company kind of pitches in, and it's kind of that rule: if you see something, say something. So they moderate in their own way. So yeah, that's what I would say for Understood.
As for me, right now, I'm a lone wolf community manager. There's just me. I don't really have moderators, but it's a support community, a closed community, so there's not a lot of need for true moderation. I don't get the trolls. I don't get the problem users as much as an external community might, where anybody can fly in. Like you, in the past, I worked at a company where it was just me. We decided to go with volunteer moderators. We, at the time, had 14 individual communities that were part of a broader brand. And in that case, because there was so much going on, we had 16 million users too. So if you can imagine 16 million users in 14 communities, I needed help. There was no way I could do it by myself. So at that time, I had 200 volunteers that helped out to help me keep things under control. It's great. I think that volunteers tend to be more passionate. They give more time usually than an employee would, because for them it's a hobby. They're not being forced to do it. So if they step up and say, I want to help, and they follow through, that's a big deal. A lot of them won't follow through. Then you really have a strong and passionate person that's there and that's going to champion not only in the community but outside of the community as well. And with volunteer moderators, if you support them and celebrate them as much as you can, and give them their 15 minutes of fame, that's going to go a long way to getting them to stick around and be helpful. I have a quote that I like, and it's, you build your reputation by helping others build theirs. And that's a prime example of how you can do that, is supporting those volunteers and making sure that they get the recognition within the community and within your company as well.
Awesome. Rachel, Terry?
Okay. Oh, I'll jump in. I am actually going to be approaching this from a bit of a different standpoint. I listened to the one that was last year because Emoderation happens to be one of our competitors. But we offer moderation as a service to large brands. So we actually have teams 24/7. We have close to 400 employees all around the world. We all work virtually and in multiple languages so that we are able to be there for the brand and moderate. It's different kinds of moderation, post-moderation, pre-moderation. We do some live event moderating, contests, that sort of thing. And so depending on the size of the brand and the level of service that they want will depend on how many people you have moderating at one time. When I did social media, it was one person at a time for a shift. When you do something like a news site, you usually have it's pre-moderation and there's a queue, and so several people will be in there moderating to be sure the comments get out in a timely manner.
So at my team at Pipeliner, we're a global team, so I think I have an amazing advantage over a lot of our competitors. We have a around-the-clock staff that can chime in at any time to keep that engagement going in the moderation. So we're really responding in real time, not just the right time is very important to us. So, and we also have a great community of partners, and they're very active on our channel. So we rely heavily on them, and we like to give them shout-outs whenever possible to keep that engine going.
Yeah, in our community it's four of us really that moderate, as well as do all of the community management. So we don't have any volunteer moderators or anything at this point, though I can definitely see it reaching that in the somewhat near future.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty similar with David as well. We are two of the three lone wolves howling at the moon, like the awesome T-shirts you buy at Goodwill, or a crew neck sweater, whatever floats your boat. But when I came in, our main communities really are our coordinators and our managers across the country, and we have about 50 managers and about 400 coordinators. And so really managing those two communities, and those are the ones that really need the more heavy moderation. When I came in, there was 3 or 4 people that were actually moderating, and nobody was really following any sort of rules for moderating. Everybody had their own idea of what that sort of looked like, which kind of made it a little bit difficult and confused a lot of people as to what was good and what was not. But yeah, we don't have as many volunteers, but it's definitely something that we're starting to get that structure in. And obviously we know that structure is important. We need to have moderation in some way. So how do you guys think that moderation is really important for the health of the community? Where does that really come in?
I think it's super important. I think that's probably one of the problems people are experiencing with LinkedIn groups is there's a lack of moderation. So they're just kind of these chaotic spaces that nobody wants to participate in. So if you're able to keep your community positive, always educational, giving shout outs to people who are not always acknowledged, that's really powerful, and it keeps your community strong.
I have a question. Go ahead, Terry.
Okay. Anyway, for ours, I was going to say that things like trolls and spam, pornography, vulgarity, bullying, hate, racism, these type of things not only are going to clog up the community feed, but they're actually going to cause some people to leave the community. So I really feel that the purpose of moderation, particularly for large brands where you have large communities, is to keep the community posting within the set guidelines and to protect the members as well as the brand itself.
I have actually 2 follow-ups now. Terry, just to echo what you're saying, I think you're exactly. Those are the kind of things that nobody wants to see in their community. They're very distracting, and often when you see something so jarring, it takes precedence over everything else. It trumps the reason why you're in that community anyway. If you're seeing those things, that's obviously going to rule your attention. So I agree that the primary reason for moderation is just to keep things clean and on focus. And then Rachel, as a follow-up, this is, I guess, on topic, but for things like the LinkedIn groups, or in my instance, for Understood, we have a community that's broken up into sections. So there's each section has a different moderator, and they kind of move the conversation forward in a way that they think is necessary. But so for LinkedIn and places like YouTube where people own a section of the site, who is LinkedIn or YouTube responsible for providing those moderators, you think, or would it be the channel holder or the LinkedIn page owner? Are they responsible?
Yeah, in my mind, the direct, I guess, responsibility goes to the channel owner, whether it's YouTube or LinkedIn. If it's something, you know, horribly catastrophic that's taking place, then yes, LinkedIn or YouTube as, you know, the network would need to step in. But first responsibility would definitely go to the channel owner.
Now, here's a quick question with that. How well do you guys really think the moderation, the ability for moderation, is set up in channels like LinkedIn and YouTube? Because I know that there is, you know, differences obviously with Google Plus or Facebook groups, for instance. How do you guys really think that, like, LinkedIn and YouTube really fall in that hierarchy?
Well, I think in some ways LinkedIn makes it easier because you can remove posts you don't like from your group. I think when you're moderating on Twitter, it's a little harder because you know, that tweet lasts forever, and you can try and quieten it, but you can't just, you know, remove it from public record as easy.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that everything offers the tools. It's like if you're a group owner on LinkedIn, you've got to own it, and you've got to be in there and police it. And if you don't, then it's going to be a terrible group. And so many of the groups that are on LinkedIn were started and abandoned by the owner, and they're left open. And being open, anybody can come in and they can post anything. And reporting it, if the owner's not around, is just totally useless. You can report it, but it doesn't actually go away. The same with YouTube. You've got to police it yourself. You can turn them off on YouTube, and we've had instances of high-level YouTube off completely. But you know, it takes time and effort to do it. With LinkedIn, your best bet is, if you want to have a group, is close it off and only let people in that want to join. And if they step out of line, you can kick them out.
I think that's these are great points too. One of the reasons I asked that follow-up question about LinkedIn, Dom, and it's kind of where you were going too, is if the channel owner is responsible, they, to some extent, are only as good as the tools allow them to be. So if, you know, for instance, they're not able to remove a comment or to contact an individual user or to flag things as spam, whatever it happens to be, then their community is going to go the direction that the technology demands it go. Is that right or wrong, or input there?
Yeah, I agree there are limitations, but again, I think it comes back to just being an active manager and being proactive in your moderation. I think you can sidestep a lot of the limitations that the networks might currently offer.
True. And
I think that's, you know, that's one thing that the onus really does fall a lot on the person that's managing it. You know, it's I think that the tools are there. Some are a little bit more intuitive and a little bit easier to use, but I think that the tools themselves are there, and it really, like what David said, you just have to really be on top of it, and you really have to own it. That's I think we've got pretty much how moderation is really important for the health. Now, what role does moderation have in the brand's reputation? Because a lot of the stuff we're talking about is sort of more internal communities, at least what I've heard from some of us, but I know that some of this can get very external. How is this really important for the brand's reputation?
I would just throw the YouTube community back out there. I mean, I think YouTube has an awesome reputation. You know, it's the third biggest website in the world now, something like that. but the community has a terrible reputation. I mean, the comments there are, what kind of community is it? I say terrible reputation. I should take that back. It's just a hard place to participate because there's no moderation. Again, goes back to the channel owner. I've seen channels on YouTube which are moderated, but I think that it does help shape a brand's reputation. If you go into a community and it's confusing, there's misinformation, people are giving mixed signals, saying things about the brand that are contradicting, then it can ruin the brand's reputation for sure. On the flip side, if moderators are on board and on the same page with the brand's messaging, then they can help carry conversations forward and with a single focus to help communicate what the brand is all about to the community at large.
Yeah, I completely agree. The moderators should be well versed in, the brand's culture, overall marketing messaging, and should be able to flip a negative comment to a positive right away. Because you're crowdsourcing information, and that's one of the most powerful things about community. And accepting a negative comment is just part of it. And sometimes you get the best results for that, whether it's you change part of your product or your service. So yeah, moderation is the brand reputation, I would say.
Yeah, I have to agree that moderation does play a large role in that. Being able to detect something early on and escalate it if need be, catching any negative comments about the brand, like detecting a crisis. And other areas would be like copyright infringement. You'd be watching out for even counterfeit sales that happened once with one of our clients. So there's a lot of things that moderation can catch that are a risk for the brand.
How do you educate your moderators? I mean, I know when I've started new jobs, I go through a pretty intense onboarding process as an employee. You learn about the brand, you kind of become an expert in that company. Do you expect the same level of knowledge from your moderators? Since and as Rachel said, they are your brand in a large way.
I wouldn't. They're volunteers. You can't force them into anything. You can't force them to learn. You can't force them to be on the forum at a certain time or moderating at a certain time. So you have to have, I think most importantly, you have to have clearly defined rules for how your community operates and what's expected and what's looked down upon. And I think at first you need to be very tight with those rules and not let anything slide. And then it trains the community into the behavior that you want. And once that happens, they begin to self-moderate. And you'll reach a point where if someone steps out of line, someone else will come in and say, hey, we don't accept that here, so chill out. And you'll find that hearing it from a community manager, even if they're not a community manager, but a community member, especially if they're not a moderation team member or the community manager themselves, goes a long way to letting people know what the culture is like within your community.
Exactly. And I was just going to add that if you're on the payroll, then yes, you do have to be trained. I went through extensive training plus shadowing by the account manager. Plus, we have guidelines from each brand and clearly what they expect and what procedures are.
Yeah, and you guys bring up a lot of good points, and I think that for me at least, it's something that obviously I want to sort of place it in the head of any volunteers that I have or anybody that's coming up and is going to help me moderate to strive to reach that highest goal, to strive to be that person that really takes ownership, that knows everything. That's really important for them to reach towards. But it really does all begin 100% with you as a community manager. Like what David was saying, I mean, this is really, it's trickled down, because if you're sort of lax and lean, then the next person is going to be a little bit more loose, and next thing you know, it's going to be, completely out of there, and then your brand's reputation is really going to go down.
I want to jump in with this question from Kelly because it's kind of on target with what we're talking about right now. And she just wanted to know, for those of you who do use volunteers to moderate, how do you decide who to trust with your community? Because she feels really protective over her accounts.
That's easy. When you wake up and you know somebody's name just by what they've posted, then that's probably a safe person, assuming that you've liked the way that they've posted. If you know somebody's name, like on a daily basis, you see them posting, that's probably a good champion for you, as long as they're being positive in your community and following the rules that you've outlined. Obviously, if it's the other end of the spectrum and you know them because they're a pain in the butt, then that's not the person for you. But if you've got someone that is consistently doing good in your community, consistently popping up on your radar of good posts and good follow-through with your other members, then that's someone that I feel like you can trust in your community.
I'll add, too, that we started the community, the people who seeded our community were the moderators. So before we had an area for them to interact with members, we chose the volunteers who would then act as moderators in the community. And we just put a call out for people to apply, and they went through an interview process. It wasn't very rigorous, but we did want to know why they were interested, and we did want to know how involved they were on social media and what other communities they had participated in. So we did our due diligence in selecting the people. But I think just like hiring people to work for your company, you're also not necessarily hiring, but you're bringing someone on board to do. I said earlier, there might be a level of a level that you expect an employee to know and perform at, and then a level you expect a volunteer to perform at. And I guess you decide where that level is. For me, I wanted the excellence to be just off the charts. I want my volunteers to know and really embody the brand, but also a specific community. It's learning and attention issues. So I don't want somebody to moderate our community that has no idea about the space. I want them to kind of be familiar and understand what's going on so that they're equipped to handle situations that will arise in the community. So I would say for us, the interview process worked really well. But then back to David's point, once you have an established community, just escalating people who are already really involved to a moderator role has worked really well for me in the past.
I have kind of a similar question here from Emma, who wanted to know if you have volunteer community manager staff or moderators, are you working at scale?
I guess you could say that Pipeliner is, because we do have a very active partner channel. And as a part of their onboarding, we ask them if they plan to, be active on social, and we go so far as to give them what we call a playbook, which is kind of, how we expect behavior, kind of elevator pitches on how they can talk about the product and respond to service or support questions. And we really try and equip them with as much information as we can. So when they are participating in our communities, it looks like it's one of us. So, and it's worked out quite well.
We, again, we're not at scale when we brought on the volunteers, but this is an interesting answer to your question, because we hoped by bringing on the volunteers, they were people that we had interviewed and kind of stalked a little bit online. That's the wrong term, but you get the point. So we saw how involved they were in communities outside of Understood. So we had hoped that those volunteers would help take us to scale, because they would bring in people in other communities and kind of ambassador our brand out. So we kind of targeted influencers in a way some of them didn't have a large following, but they were really big participants in other communities. So no, we weren't at scale, but hopefully those volunteers will help take us there.
Awesome. That's great. It's got some really good stuff. And just so everybody does know, if you're checking it out over at Twitter, if you have any other questions, we have a couple more here, but we'd love to get a few more of your guys' in, so make sure you just tweet them out there, and we will throw them up on the screen, and you will be internet famous. So rolling on to question number 4. I think this one's actually going to be really good. I want to know what you guys think about this. How do you handle a large group of negative posts? So not just like one here or there. Let's say that something happens and you do get a lot of negative stuff out there. How do you guys really handle and moderate that?
Well, you know my feeling on it. So pretty much, ultimately they're on your side. They want things to be better. They just suck at communicating it. If you get a large influx of negativity, generally there's a reason for it. Hopefully it's something that's manageable. If it's a product, maybe it's a bug. If it's a mistake you've done in social media, then the whole world is going to know about it. But you need to really get on top of it in some ways, just so that you are aware of what the problem is and start communicating with your company to resolve it. But you don't want to necessarily jump in and respond right away. Collect your data, gather your information, get a plan of action, but just know that you need to be timely, but you don't have to be instantaneous. And make sure that you have a plan of action, because when you come into the community and say, all right, we hear you, and these are the steps that we're going to take to resolve it, it's a lot better than, we hear you, I'm talking with the company, we're going to figure this out. So it's better to be able to have an answer. I had a boss a long time ago that says, don't come to me with a problem, come to me with a solution. And that's what I'm saying here is, if you've got a problem in your community, don't come back at them and say, we agree, we have a problem. Say, we agree, and here's how we think we should go forward to solving this. And the community will let you know if you're out of line in your solution, or if they have a better solution, or if they think it could be better in some way, and they will help you solve your problem. And if they feel like they're involved in the solution, they're more likely to calm down and not be so negative in the forum. People really just want to feel like they're heard, and when you acknowledge them and say, we hear you, and we'd like to keep hearing from you, it's going to really cut back on a lot of the negativity. I don't feel like you should ever remove that kind of stuff from the forums or publicly, because I think it goes it shows a lot of the culture of your brand. If you step in and say, we made a mistake and we're going to fix it and you're going to help us, or we're going to fix it and this is how, it shows that you're a compassionate company and you're willing to listen and go forward.
I think that's about as close to a mic drop as you can get, but you guys have...
I'll jump in. I was going to wait because I know I'm coming from a totally different perspective, and because we manage those things for large brands, and they have very strict guidelines. So if something negative comes up, usually we can just leave it unless it's breaking one of their set rules, like maybe vulgarity or racism or something like that. Then we we do have to delete it. Otherwise, you can leave it. I've done a bit of moderation on news sites, and there's a lot of negativity, and it's the same thing. As long as they're not breaking any of the guidelines, we go ahead and leave it. For brands, we do have some teams that engage as well as moderate, and generally they can get in there and make a comment to help calm things down a little bit or ask questions. But that is also the moderators have guidelines as to what they can say from the brands as well.
Yeah, I haven't had too many experiences with large amounts of negativity on any of my communities, and when I have, it's been strictly product related. So I guess I'll just echo kind of what David said, and you know, kind of inform them on what's happening. You know, what this is our product roadmap. Typically, it's when you release something in beta and it just blows, and you can turn those upset people into kind of, you know, your next beta tester group, and kind of move that negativity to more of a confined area, perhaps a forum they can give you feedback on. But yeah, I always leave the comments up because it's good to show progress, and you can report back and say, look, we're fixing it. We took your suggestion. We hear you.
I think that, you know, when you talk about posts that, you know, border on, you know, racism and profanities and stuff like that, I still think you can go in and say this is not acceptable behavior and then close it and leave it there, because it shows the community that this is what's going to happen if you break our rules. We're going to shut you down. But I understand that some companies are very hesitant because they feel it's going to negatively impact their brand. But on the flip side, if they would leave it, and, you know, as professionals, we should be encouraging our companies to do the best thing that they can do, even when they feel like they shouldn't, or they feel like they need to protect themselves. It goes a long way to shutting down that behavior in the future. You know, if you start deleting stuff, the troll's just going to make your job harder because they're just going to start posting more. And, you know, you can ban them, but they'll get around it. And I think you get into a situation where it becomes an all-out war between your moderators and the person that's trolling or causing issues. Much better to say this is unacceptable behavior and close it than to remove it entirely and give them a reason to do more.
David, what about posts on Facebook, for instance, where you can't necessarily close a thread, and so maybe you're engaging a troll, so you're saying, hey, this is not acceptable behavior, and they just keep coming back with arguments or more comments. Should you continue to engage, or should you assert your position and then kind of let them trail off?
Yeah, you can't, you know, you hear the rumor about don't feed the trolls. I believe that you should care and nurture trolls. If they're continuing to post in the community and causing issues after you've responded to them, then I think you can go in and say, listen, you know, I don't think we're communicating well. I'd like to take this offline, and then contact them directly. And by contacting them directly, I mean try and get a phone number and call them. You'll be amazed that either they'll get scared and leave, or you'll actually get to talk to them, and suddenly they'll be the nicest person in the world that was just frustrated. But, you know, you can always say, we hear you, we understand, I don't think we're communicating well here, let's take this offline, maybe an email, maybe a phone call, so that I can better understand what your issue is, or not issue, because that sounds negative, but understand where you're coming from, and shut it down that way. I myself have picked up the phone and called users and said, I'm not fully getting what you're trying to do, and, you know, we're disrupting the forum. I want to talk to you and figure out how we can make this better for everybody. And that will typically shut it down in a hurry. And if you do that in the community and say, listen, let's take this offline, I want to help you, then when they continue to be negative, then your community, other community members are going to see that you've made the effort to try and solve the problem and to, you know, cut down on the negativity in your community. But, you know, they'll eventually get to the point where they're like, dude, he's trying to help you, let him help you. And the community will start to reinforce your arguments or your efforts to keep things under control.
That's great. Thanks.
All right, now I have a little bit of a thing. This is a little different than just negative comments that are going, because this is something that was kind of happened because the brand wasn't very smart. But I don't know how. I just want to get your guys' feedback on what you would do in this situation. I don't know if you know, but yesterday the New England Patriots had 1 million followers on Twitter. And so what they started doing was they were taking all of the usernames of everybody that followed them, put it on the back of a Patriots jersey with a little thing that said, thank you so much, and signed by one of the Patriots, and they were tweeting a bunch of these out. What they didn't know is that a lot of the people that followed the Patriots had pretty offensive and racist usernames. and a couple of those were screenshotted, and they shut the entire thing down. But as you know, I think Rachel, you were saying earlier, you know, on Twitter, that tweet's out there for forever. So that stuff, you know, once it's screenshotted, it's out there, and then you have the Patriots logo and this slur, and obviously there's a lot of backlash that came from that. If you were in the position as a community manager managing that community, how would you actually handle that? It's a little off script, but I just want to know what you guys think.
Well, I mean, that's a major oversight. I'm not even sure, but I mean, you say you're sorry. Yeah, that's.
Didn't that happen to Pizza Hut not too long ago too, where they used a hashtag that was being used by people who had survived some type of tragedy in their life, but they were using it to mean like, come get pizza right now. So when they were called out, they basically said, you're right, we made this mistake, we own up to it, it will never happen again, we're so sorry. And I feel like they got a lot of positive press after that for just like owning up to their mistake instead of like trying to take it down and not commenting. I don't know. I'm going to chalk this one up to I don't know anything about football, so I'm not going to answer.
No, certainly
yeah, I mean,
they could have had
you
some
do need
filters
to
out
own
there.
it. I guess it's like, you know, at the World Series when they gave the guy the car and the person handing him the keys couldn't adequately describe the vehicle, but they totally turned that upside down.
Technology and stuff.
And stuff, you know, things, whatever. Yeah, you just got to make it work, and just, you know, everyone makes mistakes. Just own it.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I just wanted to get a little bit of that in there just to see what you guys thought about it. So the next question, and this sort of plays in a little bit, especially if you have something as big as what happened. But you know, if you're working with brands, you're working with clients, and you're helping them with their moderation, or at least training them on how to help people to moderate. When does legal play a role in moderation? When I know that Emma Cunningham, you know, one of my Train Monkeys podcast co-hosts, always talks about legal. What do you guys think about that? Where does that really have a role?
I know that in my communities, if ever anyone said, I'm getting a lawyer, we immediately shut them down, flat out, and said, you know, you need to talk to our lawyers. So in the gaming community, that happens a lot. People will get upset and say they're going to sue you. In our policy, you know, ban them permanently from the game and all use of the game, ban their forum account, lock their post, and send them an email that said, if you would like to continue this discussion, here's the email address of our lawyers. And that tended to shut down any of those kinds of conversations in a hurry. But that was just for us covering our butts. I know that in the case of, at least in the United States, we have laws that protect you as a community owner or a company that's running a community or any kind of thing. You know, your users can generate content that says that you are not necessarily responsible for what they post. So you've got a lot of safety nets built in place for that. But I still think as a brand you should monitor that and keep things under control, just, you know, to cover your butt. And certainly, you know, you got to watch out for rogue employees as well.
I want to say that, like for media sites, like we moderate for Canadian Broadcasting Company and NPR, and with news sites, it's pre-moderation because of that. A lot of times, because you do have to be aware of the issues of liability. Not so much in the U.S., but I know Canada is pretty strict about that. Also, copyright issues you have to look out for. And then with, you know, brands like retail brands, that type of thing, then I think you have to be aware of threats to specific people, to brands, There's things like suicide threats or maybe harming children, bomb threats, stuff like this. And these have to, because it's also about escalation, these have to get escalated immediately. And so we usually have a contact in the company. We call them if it's especially something like suicide or bomb or something like that, and contact the police. So very important.
We do the same thing, Terry. We've had some instances where people have threatened to hurt themselves. This is not at Understood. I'm still talking like I'm back at my last job. But we had instances where people threatened to hurt themselves. So our moderators had the ability to collect an IP address, and were empowered to report that post with the IP address to local authorities, whether it be the police department, whatever. So yeah, I don't know if everybody has that capability, but that's what we did.
Awesome. Well, that's some good stuff, guys. Just so everybody knows, over on Twitter, we do only have one question left, and we got about 13 minutes. So if you do have some questions, go ahead and shoot them off to myself or to Sherry, and we will rapid fire to this awesome all-star moderation. And Sherry said that she has 3 pending, and that shows how good Dom communicates. So keep on sending the questions, but we do have technically 4. So the next question I have for you guys is, and we've touched on this a little bit, but how do you really empower your volunteers to moderate? You know, if you guys have any actual real-world examples of specific people, you don't have to name names, but what are ways that you really empower your volunteers to moderate?
Me, I guess it's pretty simple. I just acknowledge their good efforts, and I like to think that that reinforces the behavior and they continue to do it. I also friend them. I think your advocates, you know, they do truly become friends over time, so it's great to, you know, connect, whether it's just on a Hangout or if you're able to connect offline, do so, and that really strengthens the relationship. But I think it ultimately just comes down to acknowledging their efforts and giving them a little shout out in the community.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that recognition internally and externally. So behind the scenes, say thank you, you're doing a great job, and in the community say I'd really like to thank you for doing a great job. You know, it's all about that reputation thing. Build theirs, build yours. Making sure that you acknowledge them in the community not only makes them feel better and gives them their 15 minutes of fame, but it'll encourage others to step forward and say, you know what, I want my 15 minutes of fame too. And you're likely to get a higher quality people coming forward to saying, I want to help out. Internally, externally too, I should say. That's not just volunteer moderators, but within your company, you may find people that say, you know, I think I could really help in this part of the community. And by letting them know, their boss know that they're doing a great job, that'll go a long way for them to continue to be good in the community.
We also open a line of communication so that the volunteers know that they are always available to reach out with any questions or concerns. And we try to give them as much information as possible. So if something new is coming out, or there's new content published on the site, whatever it is, we want to keep them informed so that they're well educated about the brand and what's happening with our brand, so that they can go out and actually speak knowledgeably.
That's awesome. And one thing that I've at least done, and that I really enjoy doing in particular, is when you're looking for those people that you want to pull up and to give more responsibilities to, just for yourself, sort of put yourself in this lens of not thinking, all right, I have to do this all on my own, or this is what I've been doing, but really have that sort of scout mentality and just have fun looking through what these people are posting, the communications that they're having, and just see how they're interacting with that. And And that alone is a great way when you actually do talk to them. Just go, hey, I sat down and for like 25 minutes I just scrolled through all the different posts that you put, and I love what you're saying. Just you don't have to do that much other than just recognize them for what they've already done. Sort of when they didn't think that somebody was watching, and that alone, I know when someone's done that for me, it made me feel pretty damn good. So that's good. Sherry, do you have a question over there?
I do. And how do you differentiate moderators and staff in the community?
Within our community, we have icons that appear under our names when we post things. We actually have a couple. I have a beta community that within my community, these are people that we got on board early and said, help us build this community right. They have a special symbol, so they stand out from the rest of the community. Our employees have their own unique symbol, so that when you see a user's name, even if they have a personalized avatar, beneath it you can see whether or not they work for the employees or for the company, or if they are part of our beta group. Otherwise, the users can select their own little icon as part of doing things in the community. You can do other things depending on the software too. Some allow you to put titles underneath everybody's names to do it. It just depends on the platform, but there's a lot of ways. You could even come up with custom avatars. Almost every system supports avatars. You could just say, when you become a moderator, this is an avatar you can use. Maybe it's a red frame on the picture or something like that, or some kind of an icon.
Now, what if I want my avatar to be Sigourney Weaver? Is that sort of a meta avatar?
It could be.
I have another question for Marjorie. Have you ever had to remove someone who continuously posts negative info regardless of moderation efforts?
Absolutely. I see banning as the last resort. Banning means that I have failed as a community manager and as a moderator. That's the way I feel about it. So I hate banning people. It is absolutely the last thing that I want to do. But have I done it? You betcha. Have I had regrets after doing it? Normally, no, because they have earned it. It used to be I was very lenient, and nowadays I'm a 3 strikes you're out kind of guy. I'll give you a warning, I'll give you a temp light ban, and then I'll just tell you goodbye. There's absolutely no reason why you can't fire somebody and say, there might be another community out there that's better for you than ours. In fact, I go so far as to say if you would like to set up another community of your own, I will help you do it so that you can do whatever you want in your community.
Fair enough. We talked a little bit on this just briefly because Terry's worked for a third-party agency as far as moderation, and I know like Emoderation does this as well for companies. I don't know if any of you have experience to share kind of on third-party agencies moderating community versus volunteers or internal moderation.
Okay. Yeah. Let me see if I can remember that question. I'm kind of like, what was the question again exactly?
Sorry, I have to hardwire mute and unmute myself because I'm hosting. Really just kind of, if you can quickly share maybe some pros and cons of third-party moderation versus internal or volunteer moderation.
Okay. Well, I think for large brands in particular that it is important because like for us, we're able to be on a brand's page 24/7. Most of our moderators are multilingual, and it just gives you the opportunity to respond quickly and to always be aware of what's going on. So I think for something large like that type of community, especially on social media, that it helps a lot. I mean, besides moderation, we offer risk management. We do offer engagement for those who want it. We do social listening so that we can keep track of, on top of what's happening in the brand.
Yeah, my experience is very limited with an agency, but I did find that they were able to respond on a 24/7 basis, and they were much more likely to remain neutral on topics. Where internal moderators, they're very passionate about your product, your brand, so sometimes they can get a little fired up. So I think having an agency can definitely maintain the status quo a little easier in my experience.
I wanted to say along with that because I did moderating for a year for CBC, a news site, and we were trained to not be biased. We had to, look at it not from our own point of view, especially, there's always political issues, religious issues, a lot of things that spark a lot of controversy, and we had to not let our own personal feelings get in there, but go by the brand guidelines.
Great, thanks guys. Question from Janet. Do you find moderating particular community types to be easier or harder? She gave couponing communities as an example, but maybe just speak to the ones you've had experience with.
Absolutely. I've got now an internal professional community, and I barely have to moderate anything. In the past, I've worked as a moderator for gaming industry, and that is, I would just like to say, trench warfare. The gaming communities tend to be very passionate, very vocal, and not only do you suck, your company sucks, and they can do your job better than you can. So you have that kind of a mentality to fight against when you have trolls in your community. I think anybody that wants to get into community management should volunteer in a gaming community just to moderate a community, because I think that'll give you the toughest skin you'll ever need to handle anywhere else. It's just you just can't let it get to you. You got to know that it's not personal. No matter what community it is, they're just trying to get the best out of it that they can get, and they don't communicate in ways that are necessarily helpful sometimes. But it's not personal. They're not mad at you individually. They may be upset with your brand. They may be upset with the way things are going, but it's not you necessarily. Although when it is you, they will definitely tell you it's you.
That's one of the things that I love about, especially just the community manager hangout that we do. I feel like for the past, 6 or 7 weeks, we've had at least one person that's had community manager experience in the gaming industry. And I mean, if you're talking about it, I mean, that's like working retail around Christmas. Like it gets pretty nasty, and I think that's something that it's good to have that sort of toughen up your skin a little bit, but at the same time, it is always nice to have that reprieve of a really easy sort of self-moderating community.
Great, thanks guys. I have one more question here from Carmela, and actually we're going to be talking about retention and incentives in a couple of weeks, but kind of throwing this out there from a moderation perspective, do you do anything as far as incentivizing community members as moderators or anything along those lines?
I just want to throw this out there. I try to be helpful as possible. If you're using volunteer moderators, you have to be very careful, at least in the United States, about giving anything that could have a monetary value. That's not to say that you can't give them things, small things, but if you start giving them large things like trips to conferences and stuff like that, you run that border of it being counted as income. And years and years and years ago, all of the AOL moderators for their chat rooms kind of fought back when they weren't getting paid for the work that they were doing. So I just caution you, it's okay if you give small things, but watch your money, how much you spend, because it could come across as an income for that user, and it could cause legal issues for both of you.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. Well, this has been a absolutely fantastic panel. Thanks again to everybody. Thanks to Jordan for submitting this and all of this. It's really been great. A great chat over at Twitter as well. Sherry, what do we have coming up next week?
Actually, the next 2 weeks are also suggestions from Jordan because he's full of ideas always. But next week we're talking about crafting community expectations. So. Fantastic.
Awesome. Well, yeah, guys, thanks a lot. Make sure you check out the replay and share it and connect with everybody on Twitter. Head on over to mycmgr.com. If you do have any suggestions for some stuff we should talk about, click that participate button. And, yeah, hope you have a fantastic weekend, and we will see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.